I'm going to introduce our guests here. Let's go to the next slide here with a little bit of a background on them both. I know both Paula and Alex professionally. We've worked together a little bit. We also have, kind of posted things online and all. I'm going to guess that many of you have seen Olex here online. If you're active on LinkedIn, he always has a lot of really interesting posts and is a good bellwether for what's going on technology. With Paula's really, we've worked some together. I've watched her teams really kind of blossom, actually, with their taking on of technology and communication and working with developer groups. And so I really think she has a lot to say there. Olex, in a former position, we worked together, but also saw that he had really significant challenges, and that company where he was working still has kind of some challenges in that they have a unique way of managing technology for localization that requires a lot of little adaptation. And so there's sort of, they both kind of solved issues where you had to have a lot of hand-holding or work and persuasion and team building that would interface with developers. So a unique kind of technical expertise had to be developed within teams. And so I think they have a lot to say about all this. Alex Pysaryuk, I probably butchered your last name. I wonder if you could say it for everybody.
Thank you, Adam. No, you didn't butcher.
Okay.
Pysaryuk.
All right, Pisar. It's very hard for an American to say that. That's good. So Alex is what he typically goes by, and Paula Hunter. That's an easy one. Paula is in the Vancouver area. Is that still correct? All right. And Alex is in the Toronto area. Alex working for GitLab these days. And he's really built a lot of teams as he goes. I know Paula from her work with Motorola. We had a slide about layoffs, but we don't have it anymore. But that's we took that off the agenda. But that's certainly on the mind of a lot of people all over tech right now. I think my own thing is that the current NASDAQ jump is not really driven by AI. That's the excuse. I think it's being driven by layoffs for making profitability, but they don't pay me for that. So, all right, here we go. All right, we're going to talk about effectiveness onto good stuff, and both of them have a lot to say about that. I could read these questions off, although everyone here knows how to read. Each slide has a few questions, so I sort of cheated here in that every slide is more than a question. But all right, so let's talk about what are the key strategies for building and running a successful localization departments. And feel free if your answer spills into the other questions here.
Okay, so I can kick this off.
Okay.
So I think the same principles apply as they have for many years now, and always with a lifelong learning mindset at the core. But the key differences today compared to previous years is that we have so much more access to information and to people, and it's almost information overload in some cases. And then the other difference is we have new technology innovations to help us automate and optimize our processes. But what remains the same are a couple of key concepts. The first one is, as a leader, encouraging and enabling localization teams to think outside the building. We all get focused on the details of our day-to-day work, but it's so important to really take that step back and encourage your teams to engage in forums and discussions on trending topics, like this webinar, for example. There's so much information out there and opportunities to interact and engage with other localization professionals. So many lock leaders are figuring this stuff out as they go, and they don't have a VP or a director or even senior manager of localization to go for insights and direction, which has been my experience for the vast majority of my career. So leaning on the localization community, leaning on your LSPs for brainstorming solutions to challenges, and most often having these aha moments by learning about someone else's approach to solving a challenge. So that's the first one. Second one, integrating yourself into the stakeholder processes as much as possible. And I know Alex will have more to say about this as well, on the technical side. But even, further upstream, being part of the key planning sessions like roadmap reviews with product managers or development architecture planning sessions. Stay on top of the tools and processes and the changes happening within your stakeholders so that localization can be proactively swept up with that. So building these relationships, letting development leads know that you want to understand as much as you can about their plans in order to minimize software development lifecycle hiccups. And who knows, you might even have scripts and toolings that developers can use. We actually had a case in our team where our screenshot automation scripts were discovered by a functional QA team, and they asked to borrow them as a baseline for some of their testing. So that felt pretty good, to be able to give back as opposed to always borrowing development resources to help with ours. And then finally, carving out paths for both the department, the localization department, and your individual team members. What I found has worked really well is for the team, develop together an annual set of goals and objectives, and then break those down into SMART goals for each team member. And ideally, these team goals will directly align with the corporate strategy, and that will help you demonstrate the why of localization investment. And really listen to your team members and find out what really lights their fire and work to assign them these goals that they're really passionate about. Alex?
Paula, I totally agree with the upstream and stakeholders part. One of the key strategies for building and running a successful department, specifically in software localization, is to go upstream so you can get that coveted seat at the table. And do not worry, sometimes you don't get the seat at the table, but still go upstream in anything you do. Upstream, as in like the utmost upstream, is to align what you do with the business priorities, vision, and mission, and also with your stakeholder roadmaps. So as far upstream as you can. From my own experience of being an engineering manager at some point for an internationalization development team, we went out of the way to build relationships with engineering leadership, attended engineering leadership meetings, had fun there, brought stickers, constantly talk about our vision, presented the roadmap with a timeline, iterated on the roadmap, and always made it front and center. And another strategy is a no-brainer: always communicate. Communicate, over-communicate. Otherwise, localization team may be farther removed from the engineering department, and it's going to be hard to communicate. So go upstream and communicate, and make a case to build your team the way that maps to the organization you're in. I was on the engineering side, so it made sense to hire and grow engineers. If you can, also product management team, then the notorious gap between localization and development will just disappear. You will be that bridge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I recently read just quickly on your note about communication, I read somewhere recently that when you feel like, this is the last time I need to say, or I've said this so many times, when you reach that breaking point, that's when people start to hear you. So just remember that if you feel like you've been saying the same thing over and over and over, it takes time for it to really resonate with people.
I'll add to that, Paula. This was not scripted, but the example from my past, I used to work at BlackBerry 15 years ago, and we were sitting in cubicles, and my manager was sitting next to me, and he would talk a lot on the phone with stakeholders, and he would repeat the same things over and over, and I was annoyed because I was hearing the same things that I already knew, And I was wondering in my head, why am I hearing this again and again? But that message wasn't for me or for the team. The message was for anyone who was listening to that manager, was new to the world of localization. So he had to be consistent and recurrent in his communication.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to throw in something here. An experience I had, and see if you've had that's really good, and it's a happy story. I remember working in sales at one very technical company, and I liked to speak with developers because I always felt like if I spoke with developers, I would be technically better in working with my customers. But there was a joke. If I walked into like some of the developer bullpens, they would be like, sales on deck, in other words, like kind of like a warning, like there's a salesperson on deck, and sort of a cultural resistance to talking to anybody in sales, because it's, from their perspective, it's a distraction. You don't want to say anything like sales will go sell it or something like that. But for localization, when you get to that developer level, do you feel like in your work you're welcomed, or are you a distraction that you have to overcome?
Both. I've had both, Adam.
Uh-huh.
It forces you to think differently and to communicate differently. Use the tricks. Use the language. Sometimes I said caching instead of translation memory, and it made sense to engineers. So these little things, tactics of communicating, help. And also, do not worry. I don't think any engineer who is a superstar, and you may be intimidated by them, ever sat in a booth doing simultaneous interpreting or translated the book. So you've done some cool things as well. Do not worry. But this is not a
Yeah.
competition, but like, yeah.
Right,
I think
right.
speaking the same language for sure, and also understanding what motivates them. A lot of the developers I've worked with like to be creative. They love to problem solve. So if you present them with a problem and ask them to help you solve this, my experience has been they get excited about it, especially if you can be sharing examples of customer stories. Like, look, we have these customers in Dubai who are using the software that you work so hard to internationalize, and really show them the fruits of their labor, and make those connections, show how the work they're doing is benefiting our customers in other countries.
And that right there is one of the coolest things about localization.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, look at what your product looks like in these languages,
Mm-hmm.
and look at the reach that we're getting.
Mm-hmm.
Stuff. All right. What do you, so this is, trends was along the lines of the title of the webinar, but what are some of the promising trends that you're seeing?
I think are there a couple more questions on the previous slide we want to touch on?
Yeah, but I kind of felt like we got them, but maybe there's
Okay.
something.
Oh, sure.
We didn't talk about technology, so there we go. I did jump ahead. You're correct. Thanks, Paula. Um, you spoke up, so you get to go first.
Sure. No, I mean it's an interesting question. So how can technology be leveraged to improve efficiency and collaboration? And we did touch on this, and obviously GenAI, that's been there's been a lot of hype about that. But I just wanted to call out, like, you can use simple tools that have been around for a long time that are so incredibly effective for collaboration efficiency. Like Google Drive, Docs, Sheets, Slides. It changed my life pretty much. It removed the need to have to send files back and forth and deal with version issues, that whole thing. And then, Adam, you spoke about how we work together. So enabling you to scale. So several years ago, my former team realized that the dev teams were growing quickly, both organically and through acquisitions. Motorola continues to be making many acquisitions. And our process for identifying new UI strings was attending the Scrum meetings. Like, it was very relationship based, and it worked well when we had, 3, 4, 5 teams with a couple of software repositories. But all of a sudden, our repositories grew from 5 to 20 in the span of just a couple of years. And so we needed to find a tool. We needed to find a solution to, I was not going to get budget to hire 20 more project managers to attend the Scrum meetings, remind developers. And so that was when we met you, Adam, and, implementing the tool that scanned the repos to produce a dashboard to show us exactly what had changed. And that enabled us to keep our team small but mighty, as we like to say. And fewer mistakes, fewer UI changes missed, and fewer fire drills, which eased the lives of developers as well as the localization team. So I think technology right now, what I have found the most useful is anything that can enable ease of communication, which we've talked about already, removing manual steps, and performing quick research are the most valuable in today's world.
Totally
Wow,
agree, Paula. With I think what stands in the way of communication and collaboration is not the tools, but the agreements between humans and how to use the tools. So establish a set of principles around the usage of the tools for collaboration, for planning, for communication. If you're in an R&D organization developing and localizing software, discover what tools your stakeholders use for collaboration, for issue tracking, for planning, for delivering software, and discover how localization tools can plug into those and augment the software development lifecycle with internationalization checks, with localization quality. And also on the tools side, localization teams, I think, should be very proud, because in addition to all the tools we use as localizers, translation management systems, workflow systems, we are in a unique position because we learn tons of other systems and tools that other departments use within an enterprise. And one day, we as localizers will connect with those systems to build pipelines for continuous localization flow, for content communication, for collaboration. So the knowledge is vast there, and localization teams should be proud, constant learners of technologies.
Absolutely.
Very good. Very good. I'm going to steal that small and mighty quote. That's really good.
Small but mighty.
Most teams, actually.
Yeah, I think we've used that in just about every presentation that the team has given. Because it's true. It's true.
Yeah, it's good. All right. How can localization leaders consistently and effectively communicate the value of internationalization and localization?
Yeah, this has been a question that's been around for quite a while. So, I mean, we touched on this before, it's important for lockheads to, lockheads sounds like blockheads, lock leads to be engaging with all stakeholders on a regular basis and, piggyback onto the metrics that they all deliver. Our localization word count metrics aren't really meaningful. And so be curious and find out what kind of metrics are being delivered across all the other teams, and also find out what's important to the other teams and tailor your communication towards that common goal. Alex mentioned earlier about speaking developer languages. You have to be able to speak product management language and finance and IT and marketing. And there's always opportunity to take these business metrics or concepts or priorities and add the international impact to it, rather than trying to come up with a way to affect leadership on your own. Be curious and find out what other people are doing. And understand their motivations. So, for example, one thing I've learned is the finance teams, build relationships with the finance teams. They report monthly or quarterly on profit and loss. So find a way to access this data and see if you can find a way to break it down, in more than just rest of world or more than EMEA, because EMEA, Europe, Middle East, Africa, there's so many differences between that, and lumping that all together you're not going to have very many insights. So find a way to access this data and see what you can do with it to tell your story, and attend business review meetings and take a look at how they distill those revenue numbers. And then marketing teams, what do they measure? And can it be adapted or broken down by region? You know, marketing is talking about SEO. Are they looking at international SEO? They're looking at website traffic. Are they looking at traffic by country? So you can try to obtain these reports, and if they're not showing international, you know, work with the marketing team and see if you can create a regional specific baseline. And then same with engineering, you know, what does engineering measure and how can localization get in on that? Does engineering already have tools that monitor user behavior, for example? Is there a way for you to see how many users are selecting different languages, for example? So just be curious, you know, build relationships with all of the stakeholders, not just the ones that are sending you, you know, projects to localize, but other ones, just to get a better sense of how the business operates, because every organization operates differently. So that's my suggestion.
100% agree, Paula. Nothing to add except one example. I actually sat down with the marketing team in one of my previous jobs. I had a friend, built a relationship with a friend who was doing ROI calculators for customers, for the software that we were selling to customers. So we sat down and tweaked the ROI calculator to the localization things that mattered to the localization team in the context of our business. Use these tactics right and left while you communicate, while you build the relationships, while you are persistent and consistent in your communication.
That's a great example.
I'm going to mention that there are already 2 really good questions on the Q&A and some friendly chats. Keep it coming, everybody in the audience. Thank you. All right, very good. I'm going to move on to the next slide here. I think we're ready, right? There we go. What are the most promising trends for localization in 2024?
I can go ahead there, Adam. There are so many things, and I will not start with AI. I would start with localization teams needing to fundamentally understand the technologies, to my earlier point, that are used across the organization for content creation, for anything, DevOps tooling that engineering teams use, marketing technology stacks, various content management or component content management systems, authoring environments, anything that is touching any content. Once you understand the tools, you'll be surprised how many or how some of those tools are lacking the capabilities for localization management or multilingual content management, and that's where you come in. So figuring out those multilingual content management workflows in those tools is a big challenge for localization teams, but it will be one of the, it has been one of the trend for my context always, and I think it's a trend. And then to build on top of that, integrations of source systems with translation management systems, and not simply TMS connectors as integrations, but true integrations with things like metadata surfacing, metadata exchange, metadata management. Another thing I've noticed in the marketing localization context is equivalency versus non-equivalency. What about transcreation and workflows for that, where there is no source to target correspondence? And going back to the basics, using localization tools, using technologies to solve traditional software localization problems. Yes, you can use AI-powered technologies and features, but use them to identify and solve existing and recurrent problems that have never disappeared from the localization horizon. Shift left with your automated checks for localizability, for translatability. Enhance software localization with context. All of those things have been trends, will continue to be trends. You'll be just using new technologies for that.
I'm going to ask you to, just because not everybody is familiar with the term, to just explain what you mean by shift left.
Oh, shift left is fixing things early or addressing things or potential problems in software localization context, specifically at the earlier stages of planning, design, and development, rather than logging bugs for the date format is not working. There's a number of things you can do during design or product development to capture those things earlier.
I will like about those I-18N bugs. I will say that over the years, it's still the case that I see that those I-18N bugs have a shelf life of like years before people get back to them. So if you don't find them early, they tend to just sit forever in the backlog in a really bad way. That shift left thing is just so important with software creation. All right.
Yeah, I have a term for that, Adam. You may hear it first here. Localization as code. It's not new. It's just a metaphor, but it's those things that, among other tools, Lingoport does, like internationalization scans, localizability checks, testing, pseudo localization, machine translation. Build that into your software delivery pipelines. Make that localization shift left to be lock as code. Everything else will be easier down the road.
Yeah, you know, along machine translation, it's interesting because truly machine translation is like a specific slice of AI, and we've had it for a long time. It isn't necessarily generative. It's not gonna, like, you can't say to a machine translation, right, adapt this content so that it's like a child in fourth grade wrote it or something. You know, you can't do that like you can with AI. But that change this to that is not new to our industry in terms of, you know, write this in French or something like that, which is I think kind of lost on people on the outside, that we've been doing this sort of thing for a long time. All right, I'm talking too much. Paula?
That's okay. No, I just my final note on that topic. I said, just funny note. I saw this meme a few months ago. I think I reposted it. It has this image for all the skiers in the audience. Internationalizing after localizing is like attaching your bindings as you're skiing down the hill. I thought that was, or building the plane while you're in the air or something like that.
Yeah. Well, the skiing metaphor is good for us because we're in Colorado, so
right.
at least some of us in Colorado, like everybody over the pandemic, we like spread out quite a bit. All right. Do you have anything you want to add here in terms of trends?
Yeah, I mean, we touched on a lot of it already in the first half of this. You know, there's been a persistent wave over the year of transforming localization from a service to a strategy. But I haven't heard much about that recently. And I think it's because of genAI dominating the headlines. But these technologies, like Alex, you know, mentioned, they don't solve the global mindset that is required for all stakeholders. They don't solve the shifting left or moving this work upstream. This still requires humans and relationship building and leading by influence and humans understanding humans. I realized, you know, at the roundtable that Alex and I were at, the translation technology, you know, Olga was presenting on prompt engineering. She had all of these guidelines on how to create good prompts. And as I'm looking at these guidelines, I'm like, if humans could implement these guidelines when speaking to other humans, I actually think prompt engineering is going to improve human communication, because some of the guidelines are be clear, be specific, you know, don't assume, you know, and these are all the things we need to do when we're communicating with people. Like, how many times has a project failed, not because of the technology, but because of a misunderstanding, a lack of clarity? So I found that that occurred to me on the topic of AI and, you know, human to human. So like Alex said, we need to really go back and look at how we can use, like, remind ourselves, what are the fundamental problems of localization? What are the challenges that we have? And how can AI, how can the tooling help us with those? So we really need to make sure we are taking that step back and looking at the pain points and the challenges and the root cause, and then look at ways for how technology can help with that.
Well
So things
said.
like building business cases, obtaining, like, how can we obtain more data in insights? And even to the point of, we could ask AI, what's important to marketers? What are some of the metrics? Like, to start getting some ideas to prepare for your conversations with these other teams.
Thank you, Paula. All right. This might be our last question. We're running a little over, but we're okay. Are human traits now even more important? Have we kind of answered that question? Would you say yes or no? Are human traits now even more important?
Yeah,
That's
I
a
mean, I think,
softball question.
yeah.
Absolutely. There are humans in the loop is what you hear these days.
Mhm.
Humans
Yeah,
have never been out of the
there's
loop.
an LST. That was
Uh,
their tagline.
Humans have
Okay.
never been out of the loop. And yeah, traits are there and will be with you forever.
Top 3 skills.
So my top three would be, and I think I've sprinkled this throughout the whole talk so far: curiosity, learn and understand how stakeholders operate and what is important to them. This will enable you to better understand how you can integrate into their processes and vice versa. Empathy, understanding stakeholders' pain points to find that common goal to work towards. And also to understand the needs of our global customers, and collaboration and relationship building, which we've touched on throughout here.
Nice. Anything to add, Alex?
It's just so much good stuff. All of that, plus maybe critical thinking. And my own thing that I like to practice is thinking slower, as Romans would say, festina lente, which translates as make haste slowly.
Wow. That's awesome. Okay, good, good. How do you ensure that your content, if translated with AI, will not affect brand reputation? It's a little more specific question.
Sure, I can go. So this is why it's more important than ever to ensure human in the loop. And like Alex said, humans have always been in the loop and will always be in the loop, especially with the rapid pace of both evolution and adoption of these new technologies. So even developing LLMs and technology that checks the output for offensive or incorrect translations requires training from humans. And LLMs are, a snapshot in time. And as we all know in the industry, language is evolving daily. And so we're always going to need humans to be able to add that judgment. And also be able to make the call between, the classic project management triangle. You can have fast, good, cheap. You need to pick two of those. You can't have all three. And I think that requires, humans to understand what is needed at any given time.
Totally agree. I would add that about brand reputation, localization teams have always been the guardians of localized brand reputation. And now is just a chance to put the new tech and the augmenting power of AI and adjacent technologies to that same service that they've been guarding. There's tons of things out there. Availability of AI powered translations, that will be humanly reviewed after via platforms like Google, Meta, OpenAI, Anthropic, Amazon, Mistral, IBM, you name it, and other translation specialized maybe tools like our LLMs by Unbabel, if I'm not mistaken. There's tons of tech. There's tons of things you can experiment with. Try playing with open source models. Use LM Studio and get the open source models from Hugging Face and see what they can do. This is a fantastic chance to learn new tools for various linguistic and localization productivity tasks, not only translation. Maybe they can mine terminology for you faster but you are in control. You are the guardian of localized brand reputation and the translation quality. Bottom line is learn the new tech. The new tech will only keep getting better, and you with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well
I
said.
saw an announcement yesterday that even Google Translate has now incorporated AI into, as an option within Google Translate. There's almost a new announcement every day. I'm not endorsing that, just something that came across my inbox. But
Mm-hmm.
I actually was surprised it took that long, honestly. But all right, I think we get on to the questions now. Yes, I wanted to get there just because we have a few already. Okay, I'm just going to go at these right in order of how we receive them. And if everyone on here can stay on, I think this is some of the gold here because this is generally what people are dealing with in their day-to-day work. A question from an in-house software translator. Is the trend to continue to outsource translation and localization tasks as opposed to 90s trend to keep in-house teams?
I can take that. This is a good question. Trend, if it's a trend to continue to outsource translation depends on what you do, and translation has always been outsourced. And always there's a lot of that practice in the industry. That's how translation industry is built. In-house teams for some of the critical things, for some of the regulated things, for critical contexts, regulated contexts, super secret contexts, government contexts. There may be in-house teams, and there are, but the trend has always been to outsource. So it probably will continue.
Yeah, I've only had one experience working on a team with in-house translators, and I have to say it was awesome. I see tremendous value in having not in-house translators to translate everything, but rather in-house translators to be responsible to drive the quality, review what's being done, educate the linguists. And if the company has an internal LLM, that language specialist is going to live and breathe the product, live and breathe the brand. So I see tremendous value, and I think linguists, if you're wondering, what's the future of my career, I think selling that idea, selling your value to be the language quality ambassador for a company, I think it makes sense to me. And this is just my own personal opinion. I've missed having translators in the team for that reason. Our translators with the vendor have been fantastic, but to have that expertise in-house, it's like outsourcing marketing, to a marketing agency versus having a marketer internal that knows, your product. I think it's equal for linguists. I think linguists add tremendous value. And again, not to translate everything, but to drive the quality and drive, the terminology and make sure that, someone with an ear to the ground in country to be able to work with the sales teams or, work with the various people to bring those insights to continue improving the quality. So I don't know if that's going to be a trend, but that's my personal opinion.
I'm just going to add, like, I can relate to this question because I'm older than you guys. But in the 90s, you had like companies like JD Edwards that had like this entire large internal LSP within the company. HP had something similar as well. It wasn't uncommon, but I don't see that coming back. However, one of the possibilities that I could see, and in some ways we've designed technology around this possibility, is that with the relying more on machine or AI-aided translation, that you could have stakeholders that now are part of sort of the testing, just like you have testing integrated with development, you could have localization testing integrated with development very tightly, which would mean giving translators access to actually running the test environment within an application. That's something that I could see in terms of demand on speed, and also leveraging, leveraging the machines doing the first pass. The second thing is involving distributors or in-country stakeholders at a different level. I mean, the stereotypical situation is everybody in Japan is pissed off with the translation. I guess I've seen that on the outside a lot. And so giving them a seat at the table to say, hey, you haven't liked this, what would you suggest pre-release or pre-localized release as part of the process? Maybe they don't really have maybe that's a case of the dog catching the car, but and then, oh my God, we can't really do that. But I think it's an opportunity within our industry. Okay, next question. I work for an ed tech company. Excuse me, let me read this again because it kind of, here we go. I work for an ed tech company. The L10N process, including testing, is currently performed by an LSP vendor. Under a new approach, the company wants to leverage on LLMs and make translations internally. This is right on subject. Will it be a good business dealing with translations that way if there are other parts of the localization process, like reviewing and testing, that still must be performed by a third party? What would be a good strategy to succeed and not die on the try? Now, we were talking about this a little bit in webinar prep. I was, hanging out with another CEO here in Boulder, and that CEO is like, I'm not hiring any more translators. It's too expensive. I'm just using LLMs. It's good enough. That's the extreme. Anybody want to take that on?
Yeah, what I've been hearing and reading and talking a little bit about is LLMs are good for their strength is in creative, right? Like Alex mentioned, not even like transcreation, not even taking the source, but creating it from scratch. So depending on the ed tech, like what I'm imagining, if this is like a training platform, for example, where there's learning content and tests at the end, what LLMs I've heard are not good at is terminology consistency. And so if LLMs, like the potential risk, but I guess if you have people reviewing and testing, then they could check. And I would recommend checking specifically for that. Are they being consistent with the UI terms? Are they being consistent with what is being taught and the questions being asked? I guess you could do both in parallel on the not dying on the try question, run them in parallel, or do like a small trial and see how it goes. Alex?
Yes, try and learn. There will be enterprises experimenting with using AI for translation. There are today. I'm doing it myself. Depends on what you use. There are capabilities, like I'll use the example of a Google platform. There's all kinds of capabilities within the Google platform. There's LLMs. There's a trained LLM specifically for translation purposes. There's NMT, an adaptive translation recently released by Google. So there's all kinds of things. Enterprises will continue to use them. If you are the enterprise, use and learn and measure and compare and run tests. The best you can learn is how to use the new tech, but not with the purpose of, yes, it will replace, or yes, it will do better. No, it may not. Prove it. Measure it, benchmark it, but it's a new tech. Be curious about it.
Mm-hmm.
I'll relate a personal customer example that the company sort of had a core set of languages that they were looking to reach initially, but using, in their case, it was trained machine translation that we sort of augmented for them. they went instead to like 36 countries, 36 languages. There's a lot more countries involved with that. And what they did was similar to the model that you're talking about in the ed tech company, where they were using the machines, or, you know, in some cases AI. But like I was saying, even traditional MT is sort of an AI, actually. It's just not generative. But they were using that and then engaging reviewers. We have a product called, I'll toot our own horn, called Localizer QA. It's an extension to Localizer that allows you to view an application and actually make suggestions. And, you know, there's an approval process and all that, but let the in-country representatives see, you know, here's the latest Sprint set of features. Have a look at these 4 screens. They go through them, they make their suggestions. Oh, this translation is wrong. That can be immediately accepted without screenshots, and, you know, rewrite into the actual string in the repo once it's approved. So it can actually streamline that process. And we've also seen, like, outside, like in your case, a third party reviewing that translation and then making the suggested corrections once that's approved. That happens. So that can actually be fairly efficient. It is a little different than the usual, like, I'm going to send it as a localization project. And, you know, the fact is that your LSP is running it through machine translation first anyway and doing a review of that. But you're just getting it back immediately. You know, the translation, because it's via machine, is sort of on demand, and it's literally continuous. And then you're editing it, you're reviewing it before release. So it's turning where the human is in the loop into a testing thing without the penalty of, if you're waiting till testing, it takes longer to update the files. So that's an option for you. All right, is there any room for a more humanistic trend in translation and localization? After seeing so much hype around genAI and AI-enabled MT engines, it seems that many managers in charge of translation, boy, it sometimes skips around. I lose my place. Shoot. After seeing so much hype around genAI and AI MT engines, it seems that many managers in charge of translation and localization tend to throw whatever technology sticks to get things done. We've talked about this a little bit, but anything to add?
Yeah, I guess it would do. Mario, do you have any examples? Because I know, you know, throwing technology can cost money, and localization budgets tend to be quite lean. Or are you talking about, you know, free technology? Can we?
I'm probably going to move on, because I think we've actually, you know, done this. It is true that AI is you know, it's first and foremost, it's sort of a hot topic. Alex kind of touched on this, that it, or maybe it was you, Paula, that it's really good in a generative sense. But even in a generative sense, you better review what it's doing. You know, hey, it's Valentine's Day. Use a project. If you haven't used AI before, a project to take on is like, have AI prompted properly help you write a poem to your significant other. Okay, it's not really cheating, because you're going to see you're going to have to edit it fairly seriously. We have so many questions, and what I'm going to say is, if we don't get to yours, we'll write you. We do track who asked the questions. We can write to you afterwards, and even include that.
Sorry, Mario just shared his example. A VP had DeepL to run hundreds of thousands of words, and it was a disaster. I think really the key, just last note on that, we've been talking about this whole hour. Make sure that that technology is solving the problem. Like if somebody is throwing technology everywhere, ask them what specific problem is this solving? I think it's really, that's crucial.
Right, right, right.
Adam,
Yeah,
can we take a question from Marta? I'm sorry, because this is a question that was upvoted, so people probably most
nice.
interested in answering
Thanks,
this.
Kate.
Mhm.
Do you think think TMS will disappear completely and we'll just plug in AI with any collaboration tool that is easier to integrate with stakeholder tools than TMS? Sometimes TMS just lock you into whatever they were willing to integrate.
This is a great question. And I think of it not as a dichotomy, like one replaces the other or something disappears, new thing appears. They will coexist. TMS may be abstracted. If you're the enterprise, you may choose to not have a TMS, but someone will have to manage and administer it, and you may use it as a managed service, as a professional service. So it'll be abstracted from you while you focus on going upstream, if that's your choice. TMSs are developing all kinds of AI features in them. So no, they'll not disappear. We have, Paula, to your point earlier, we had been discussing this and having fun with this concept of I need a TMS, I don't need a TMS. Is CAT tool dead at the Translation Technology Roundtable? Yes and no. It's a Schrodinger cat. I use TMSs. I didn't use them. Sometimes I say that if I buy a TMS as an enterprise, my job will turn into administering and managing the TMS full time. Pick your options, pick your priorities. These are important tools that enhance productivity and all other things, quality, etc. And they will keep getting better and transforming.
Yeah, totally agree. And one of the big values that localizers bring is our awareness. We talked about being aware of not just localization tools, but development tools, marketing tools. This is another example, right? Like stay on top, be curious, learn about all these technologies, and then you as a localizer can bring options to the decision makers, right? The budget holders. You can be like, here's the advantage of using a TMS over an LLM. Here's how they can work together and present all of these options. And I think this is a big value that localizers add to companies that, many of us may not realize. We know a lot. Alex said, we should be proud of all the knowledge that we have, and we're able to show how we can tweak knobs and dials to, adjust the quality. If we implement this, the quality will go up, but so will the price. If we want to spend less, the quality. So we can provide all these examples and all of these options that no one else in the company can.
Yeah, another twist on the TMS will disappear is ask it differently. Ask it, will a CMS disappear for the website that you're managing as an enterprise? To a person needing to change a piece of text on the website, they may log into a CMS. They don't need to know how to use it. They just go into the workflow, change a piece of text in their language, and it's live on the website. What just happened? They've used the CMS. Did it disappear? No. Did they call it a CMS? Yeah, maybe, but they are not administering it or managing it. They're using it. So it transforms. One thing flows into another. You use tools, you may not know that there's some layers of complexity underneath, but that complexity is necessary.
Yeah, great point.
The one thing I'll add based on customer conversations is that, well, it's two things. First is that bear in mind is that the TMS is there to support the localization organization and its ecosystem, right? A VP of engineering or director of engineering or a marketing manager is probably not going to log into your TMS. So in terms of that globalization visibility, it's very important to the localization side of the organization. In terms of continuously delivering, there's another question that we won't get into about simultaneous release. But in terms of a continuous localization model, if you've got 70 teams in your organization, not one or two, and they're putting out, essentially some continuous delivery every few hours, then the human, if you're getting your files at the end of the sprint, in terms of product development, well, yeah, you're going to fall behind because you're going to have either a machine translation, or if you're human in the loop, then you've got a built-in delay. Plus, just as humans do, you might not send 3 strings to be translated. You might wait till you have 20 or something like that. So that's definitely a sort of a TMS awkwardness that maybe is a little bit not the right way to handle that situation. Perhaps release on Monday and correct on Wednesday is a better model. But like if you're making medical products, that's probably a really bad idea. But if you're in publishing, maybe you can get away with something not being quite right for a couple of days till you get to it. So that's just a thought of me opining. I'm going to close it up because we are at 2 minutes from the hour. Thank you. We went way over, and most of you stayed, so I appreciate that. I will any question that wasn't answered, I'll write to you, and most of them were covered, so we're pretty good. I definitely owe Mario a couple of responses. Kate, anything more to add?
Nope. Thanks, everyone. It was a really insightful session. I love it.
Yeah, I took a lot of notes. Great pearls of wisdom coming out from both of you. Really appreciate the thought you put into all this. All right.
Well, thank you for inviting us. And I love these chairs so much.
They won't show up on the recording.
Comfy. They're very
they
comfy.
They won't show up on the recording. Yeah. Okay.
Everybody recline.
All right.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Thanks
for
everyone.
having us.